Okay.
Yeah, and Johan, you're part of the MDriven team from a bit more from a couple of weeks ago, and you're head of growth. So now we're going places.
Yes, now is the outreach.
Yeah,
So this meeting will be definitely very useful, I have to say.
yeah. All right. And let's see, we have yeah, let's get going. Unless there's anything we should say up front. So I'm gonna share my screen so that we see something else.
I only see H and B, so I think that's Brian. So welcome, Brian.
Yeah.
Yes, it is Brian. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, welcome. So, last session 2 weeks ago was the first one after the summer. Sort of had a big ambition, but ran into a few snags and didn't turn out to be the most, what do you say, explanatory.
Smooth?
Well, not smooth, yeah. So we're gonna try again to talk a bit about the placing containers and what we can do with them and what they are good for. So everyone sees the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started the MDriven Designer and kicked off the turnkey prototyper. So
Did
let's
you
see.
start the recording?
Yes, recording is on. So where do we start? Well, the first thing is everything is as before. If you wanted to, you can place things on a CSS grid, and that works just fine. Let's see if there's someone needing to be let in. No, Frederick, welcome. But since this kind of UI building wasn't optimal for different screen sizes, we knew that we needed something more, and then we looked around on what others did to get a good design environment to get more flexible UI that fits any types of screen sizes, and we came up with the placing containers. So we're gonna just create an object here to see this view in the grid mode, and of course you've all seen that before, and if you change things the prototype updates. And introducing the placing container makes things a bit more complicated because now we need to make decisions, and once you introduce the placing container, every widget that you have on screen must be within at least exactly one placing container. So we get immediately some warnings here that the columns that aren't in a placing container should be. So we just move them in, and last time, Emily, you asked if you can move many. Still can't move many. So but you might need to address that. That's an initial thing. Might not be very important once you start with the placing container straight off. So now it looks like this, and of course that's not very useful until you see that what we can do with it once it changes screen size. So nothing exciting happens yet, but if we were to just turn on that this could wrap, it would be better, because as soon as it doesn't fit on the X, it will wrap. So then we can start to work with it to do a lot of child placing containers. And we have during these last 2 weeks we have changed a lot of things, how you can well, how it looks for starters. So these arrows have a slightly different design, and you can move stuff either in the tree into the placing containers, or you can also move them within the UI. So you can move around things like this. It's the same as moving things here. So that's a bit easier design. And of course, let's switch this from a row-based design to a column-based design instead. And so then we see it this way. And what we had trouble with before was that we might want to have well, the very common type of UI is that you have a fixed header and a fixed footer and something that scrolls in between. So we're gonna make another stab at trying to accomplish that. So gonna yet another placing containers and moving the grid into the middle one, and moving some things up here and some things down to the footer, just to show. Now we say that the middle one should be able to grow, because grow in its parents. So, and this is also a good new thing. If I've selected a control here, I can immediately see which placing container it belongs to with the arrow. And since the arrow is short here, I see that it won't extend to the end of the screen because the settings doesn't allow it for the time being. But maybe that's what we want. We need to change some settings to get that to happen. But as soon as you select something, you can press escape to move one level up for the placing containers, so you see where you are. So select that one and one level up. And if I continue to press escape, now I'm at the top of the hierarchy, so I won't go any further. But as we will see when we do even a deeper hierarchy, that's really useful. So in this owning placing container, this doesn't extend. So why is that? Escape. Well, the child's child's in X direction is set to, well, not set. Not set is the same as start usually. We could have it to center, and then all the stuff moves except this one. How come? Well, because we still need the sizes here. So it's still something that we're gonna stretch it. So now this stretch to cover this one, and since I've set this to wrap, when wrapping is in effect, this extra setting is also into effect, and that is start. So that tripped me up last time we talked about this. But if I remove the wrap from this, because now the outer one isn't really, I really don't want it to wrap, then this one, I can see that this one extends the whole way out. So that's good, that's what I want. Now I want the inner control to extend as well. So let's see, the parent of this inner control is this one, and its a line in X direction is start. So what I probably want is to have this one as a column going this way, because then I can set in the X direction that it should stretch. So now it covers the whole. but this one should grow and take up more space. Well, let's start with the outer one. How should we spread out the different child placing containers in this one? We justify the content with space between. That means that this will be on top and this one will be in the middle, and this one will be at the bottom. So there's space available here and here. So if I select this one, the middle one, and say that that's allowed to grow, and now this one will take up all the space. So that's good. And now it sort of looks like this. And if I add details until it still scrolls out of screen, and I don't want that. I want it to start to scroll. So to get that to happen, I need to allow this one to scroll. That's allowed to scroll. So yeah, and it still happens. And this is not a perfect example because this is a UI control that we really shouldn't use that much at this point. We should make this grid into placing containers. That's the most tested case anyway. So let's go ahead and do that and not bother too much with that. I can't get the grid to scroll just now. When we do a repeating list like this and using the placing containers, we need two containers for the grid. So I'm going to add a child one as well. And why we need two at least is that one is the whole direction of the grid, and the other one is one row of the grid. So a grid is normally starts with a column, right? So it grows downwards. Having done that and having said that this can scroll, this can scroll, and now I get what I want, that this is fixed and I get a scrolling in the middle. So this is something that we really often very much want, especially when we are on a mobile screen, etc. So let's turn off the main menu and the side menu to see how it behaves when we look at it as we want to see it on a small form factor. And there are new settings to hide the menu bar and hide this sidebar on a per screen basis, and switching this to with F12 so that we can sort of look at it like this, and saying that it's sort of a mobile. We get a much cleaner mobile interface on how this app should look. And of course, now that we have the placing containers, we can do pretty much any type of UI control within the grid. And let's see how it would look if we would do more like a card layout or something like that. So first, a card layout might look like, let's switch this to a column. So this is going to be one card. And we switch this to a row now. So the card's going to go this way. But as they meet the end of the screen, we want them to wrap. So this row should be able to wrap. And let's see how that behaves. Doesn't see much difference, but we see that it says attribute 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, so it's different. We'll see much more of how it behaves when we add a style to the card background. So you're gonna go into styles in model and create a new style, and let's call that card. And the target for that style is the placing container initially, and the placing container should probably have some kind of fill color. We don't have any color, so I'm gonna define one and just grab a color here and maybe do it a bit transparent to not hurt your eyes, and use that one. I'm gonna do a bit of margin as well to give some space between the cards, and also do a bit of border radius to give the cards rounded corners. And say that we want to use this on this placing container. So that's an expression, so we can change it with data, but so I have it as a string with citations marks like that. And let's see how that behaves now. So now it sort of looks like a card. Might be a bit big for what we want, so then we could change the styles and force these, because these have some default sizes. We can override these default sizes if we think that this edit box is too wide. We could do that simply by saying on each item here that it should have a minimum or a maximum secondary width. So let's say it's just allowed to be 70 wide, and then it would shrink like that. So we can control these things, and but I guess that's not exactly the perfect way to do it. You would probably set some styles on it and do it that way instead. We can switch this back to more of a web view to see the card layouts like this. And since we can have any type of control in this, we can have images or pick boxes, or we call them combo boxes, and etc. But we currently can't have other grids, so we have no support for tables in tables in tables with multiple data. So it's only one level, and we'll see what we'll do about that. But I think that most practical UI won't need the grid in grid behavior, because that's cumbersome for the user anyway. One issue now is that we don't really have any way to say which one is selected. So most likely we would like a button to signal that, or some kind of action. So if we were to have an action in this one, we could say that we can use the current detail variable that would have been created as it's the default behavior for cursed things. So this one should assign to self. Let's see, the current details. So it gets the name of this column, so it's details. And just gonna give that a shorter name so it doesn't mess up the display too much. And what we could do with that then is to sort of display the selected one somewhere else in the UI. So let's see if we were to add a generic column over here and say that this one uses the current details, so the selected one, and shows the attribute one. So I'm gonna name that for attribute one as well. So whenever I type something here, that's the selected one, but if I move to this one, that information isn't shown up here until I press select, because then I state that this is the selected one. And of course, this card can have any sort of inner structure, so we might want to do some more details within this. So we can do one of, can move the action and the first one into one and the other two into this other one. So we can get any type of look we want on this one. Let's say that we want an image over here. We could easily add a new attribute to the underlying object or class. Say it's gonna call it some image, and it says want to add a new attribute because we can't find any some image, and we say okay, and that's gonna be a blob. And I'm gonna use that. And let's edit it up here, just copying this one up here. So this image, yeah, maybe we should add another row here to, if I want to have this moved up, it's a bit tricky to drag and drop, because is it gonna go inside or is it gonna go on top? So there's options here just to move them step by step. So now I have it over here, and I can take that image and move it up here. You can see that it has a presentation, and that's usually not something that we want to have on images, so I'm gonna remove the presentation from it. And images are a bit tricky, because they will sort of get the size of the underlying image, and that might be really big. So if we limit it in width to the size that we want, it's easier to get a good so we see an upload icon, but that's because we said it was a blob. We really need to state that this one is a so here's the image that I added the attribute. we should probably say that the blob type is of type image. And now we have an image over here, and if I, let's see, is this the one that's selected? And I upload an image from, yeah, let's just do a print screen. No. And use that one. Then this card has one type of image, and if I were to just to make sure that we see something else, take that one, and having this as a mobile display, we can get full control of the UI and do pretty much whatever we want to edit or get it aligned. So that's one way to work with it. And I know, Lars, you have been asking for, well, can't we mix this with the CSS grid as well? And I've said that...
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we now?
No, that's still pretty hard
No.
to get going for multiple reasons. But this kind of good flexible control that we get on these item lists, we can still do things with that to improve readability. So let's see what happens if we were to take this view and copy that one and use this one instead. Just gonna do an action so that we can see this one. I'm gonna switch views here. That's not too easy because I've hidden everything. Okay, I really do want to say, but that's too late because I've hidden the buttons. Yeah. So I'm saving that one, and so I did a class action for show view one thing. Oh, it's pops up as copy because that was the name after the underscore. So the default presentation is just the thing after the underscore. That has proven to be most efficient for us. Yeah, it kept the data good. So if we instead of want this as we have this card like view that behaves a certain way, if we want something else more like a grid view, we would do this not as a row but as a column, and this one as a row probably, and we show things in this direction. Then we get the problem that this thing doesn't align as some data. So this is an okay grid until we get data with very different sizes within it. And there's no one size fits all solution to this, but one thing is to build even more placing containers to set fixed width on things to make it behave to align in this direction. It's still a pretty good fit for a flexible grid that usually you don't want to have the labels in each row like this. You would instead put them at the top in their own placing container and align those with some kind of fixed width. But you also probably want to have it to each row to wrap once it doesn't fit on screen. So since we have divided this up to 3, this one should wrap, this one should go under this one, and this one should go under that one. And that's easy enough just by setting wrap on these, I guess. I've seen that before. I'm not sure why. I think we need to have wrap on the whole thing. That's not necessarily what we want, but I think there's a thing with Flexbox for that. Probably I would divide this whole section into a separate container, placing container that wraps these things. But to get this to align, I would either I would put the image in its own placing container and set its width on that one. So this, like, since I have it in a row now, I can set this one to minimum, let's see, 210. Did I save that? Yeah. So by doing that, I've earned this space, and since this image was limited to 200 in width, I will get a good alignment of the other stuff behind it. So that's a sort of a workaround to get okay grids within like this. Within the placing container strategy. But that's sort of a problem that is left to address if we want to get a good column divider. I'm not sure that we're going to solve it, but it's something to think about. So
When you show this, Hans, it's like, wow, this is so complicated. And then we kind of need to tell everyone again, I think, that this is actually how the web is built. So this is not our invention.
No.
And it's been thought up by, a lot of people over a long time to make flexible UIs. So this is a built-in implementation of the web browser's Flexbox system. So but yeah, it's difficult to navigate.
Yeah, and even if we think it's difficult, it's I think everyone that has been working with Flexboxes on freehand with HTML in a notepad will think that this is pretty simple and pretty easy to get going, because we get quite good feedback on how things behave as things fold, and
yeah, I think the designer seems to be really good, but still you need to understand some things. So it's good that we have the old ways too, because this is not the 5-minute demo app thing.
No, so this is to when you want to put some more love into the UI than what you get with the grid layout that we have been used to see. And so now this UI is a lot more complex with a lot more levels of placing containers. So when I select one of these cells and press escape, I go to the outer one. Outer of that, that's the whole grid, and outer of that, that's the this level, and further out still, and that's the whole UI. So I think I've tried a lot of strategies how to enable one to see where one are in the UI, and I think this escape thing was pretty good to help you to sort of navigate. Okay, since these are just 3 different rows of the same repeating this one details. So what we do in the designer to make it clear that this is a multi-link is that we take this definition and instantiate it 3 times, just the same thing. So when I select this one, I actually just work on this one. And whenever I change something here, like throwing these, or changing the order on these 2, I actually change the order on all these rows. And of course I can change the order here as well, so now it's 3 and 2, and if I flip it, it's 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3. So, and yes, cool. The header and the button. Now that we have removed the menu bar and the sidebar, because we wanted that space and we wanted that control of the UI ourselves, we get another issue that we might want to have the same menu bar on multiple screens. And of course we can just copy the definition if this is our idea of how the header should look. But that will get tiresome pretty quick. So let's do yet another copy of this one. And say that for this one I'm only interested in keeping the header. I'm gonna focus on the header for this one. So I'm gonna delete and delete. As I delete the placing containers, the columns end up in the placeable grid. So I'm going to delete everything of this. And let's see. Yeah, now this one doesn't make sense because I've removed the... Yeah, it might have been a poor example, but let's say we have something like this, and I'm gonna align this with the space between, or rather space around is usually nicer, and I'm gonna add a label column that says header, and I want that in the middle. I'm gonna drop it on this one because then they switch place. And so if this is my idea of a header, I'm gonna name this something easier. I can go back to my first screen and say that if I have this end up as an object, let's see how is, I didn't test this before because I'm gonna remove these ones. Let's move this one to the footer instead for now. If this ends up as an object, so just having self here, and the context then becomes the value of the view model roots, which is thing. I should find all view models that adhere to that object. So, and then I can take the view one thing header, and that will be sort of lifted in here, and I want that to stretch, I guess. So that's a row, and it should stretch in. So I'm gonna make that a column instead to make it stretch along these lines. So this is just a preview. But what happens now from my view one thing copy is that the definition from the header view model is brought into this UI. And the benefit is that I can reuse it. I'm gonna move these things because I might want them. So this will end in an object, and then this highlights, and I'm gonna use the header again. And same thing here, that I probably want that as a column with stretch on it. This one should have stretch on it. So yeah, maybe I just to avoid this problem, I can go to my, well, this is a good example actually. I want to switch screen, but there is no way for me to switch screens because I removed the built-in header and actions. So now I'm responsible for adding those myself. And that's fine, I can do that, but probably I want to do it in my header then. So if I just add an action column here and say like self, well, let's do it like this.
Self EM save.
Yeah.
Like a save button.
Yeah, I thought I should navigate to something else, but the save is good. So I can go to this view. So whenever I press this one, I'm switching to this view. And of course I would probably want to have something smarter here. But now I can control my menu all by myself and create something that fits my purpose. And of course this is a button, and maybe I don't want that. I want a cool image here instead. And that's super easy nowadays when you can just do a screen grab of sort of this, and we go here and press paste and call it button image, and now it added that one, and it ended up in the wrong placing container, so I'm just gonna move it down a bit, this button image, and I can say that button image actually should render this action, and then the action won't show anymore, and this button image probably shouldn't have a presentation. And having done that and reloading, I get well, wasn't the perfect image, I guess. Made it a bit small. Let's say that it was and then I have a menu that will do the navigating for me. So I can work with the images and have those implement actions and do my stuff up here, have my scrolling cards or whatever here, and have my fixed bottom thing here with the hopefully small effort.
So,
Hi,
Hans,
hi.
I have a question.
Oh.
Yeah, shoot.
You go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I've got to leave for another meeting bang on 1. But so high level, I know this has been obviously designed with web HTML in mind and everything, but can it be used with the placing containers? Can they be used with WPF, and how does it kind of translate into that structure? How does it? What does it? If that makes sense.
Yes, so pretty much the same. We try to mimic everything. So if I start a prototype in VPF, the problem here is that I really didn't save my data. So let's go to the. Wonder where the data is. I'm not sure. Let's see. I'm gonna.
Well, I didn't want to sidetrack you necessarily. I just wanted to know.
No, that's a good question. So, I'm gonna turn on the menus because now I don't have any menus to create stuff. Dunk.
Obviously, we don't have the small screens necessarily so much in a desktop application, but people do tend to.
Yeah, but as you see here, at least, even if I don't have the let's see, I can't even get the. So I'm gonna bring up the debugger, and then I'm gonna go into this, and then I'm gonna take this one and drag it into here, and now I'm self, so I can do detail create self details.add. I was sort of short a button to do this and execute on that one. So now I get the card,
Right.
and it's all there. It doesn't look, and the sizes are a bit off. It's all controllable with the min and max things, and also when you have cards like this, but you see it will wrap and do things like that, and it will navigate if it's on another screen. So it's sort of all okay.
Okay.
Just thinking of, this was not on the right. Now maybe. Here it is, the data. So there's a few things that differs, but you can do pretty much the same things.
Great. Thanks. And one more dumb question: what does space between do when you've got 4 or 5 or more items rather than 3?
So the space, let's see, on this row I chose space around, and then it divides, it adds this
Proportionately,
space as well to half of the middle things. So if I have space between, it's only space between. And
Okay, so the two edge cases are to their own spaces, but everything else in between is proportional.
yes, so
Okay, got it.
so that's how that look, and that's how that looks. So those are the sort of hard-coded cases that are in the Flexbox from the start. So.
Gotcha.
My question, Hans, was I'm trying still, to have my dream come true. So what if I make a view model that uses the old style of CSS grid that is not that big, and then I put that into one of these Flexbox?
Yeah, it would have worked, Lars, unless you had proposed the change that we shouldn't have subgrids for things. It should be one main grid, that because otherwise we get the issues with the. Do you remember the group boxes? And two group boxes that were placed next to each other sort of was shifted to didn't align, and then we abandoned that strategy and said that the group box actually used the one main grid to just divide the, and so there's no space for the main grid as soon as you introduce the flex boxes, and there's no space in our current rendering strategy for the CSS that does the CSS grid. We can probably redo the CSS grid, but it will be quite a lot of work and not necessarily what you want.
Okay. Well, I have my dream alive. You can't kill my dream.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
So I think I've covered.
I don't have a use case right off, but we'll see what happens. It looks very interesting, at least.
Yeah. So of course, when I do UI like this under short time frame, everything looks saggy and off and a bit twisted. But you need to look beside that, because it's the abilities that we get to control where things go with logic, and with the CSS grid and the grid placement, we are sort of telling the computer that I want it here, but then the computer can't do anything if it's challenged and there's no place and there's no ability to put it there. So then it starts to look ugly. And the flex boxes and the placing containers are more declarative, that this is the strategy that I want to use. This is the intention of the UI. And then we leave much more room up to the browser to actually solve the problem depending on the screen size. So it's a harder way to do UIs, but it's equally hard, or even harder, if you don't have this designers to actually see that you build a hierarchical tree of placing containers that you can control and move around, and also that you have the data within it, because that's the next challenge, to have data within the flexible UI. And we have done everything here and done apps to show that now in this short demo. So I think it's coming along really, really good, and production grade, and perfect to use in production systems.
Thank you, Hans.
Thanks very much. I've actually got to jump off to the email, but appreciate it. I'm going to test it out. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, yeah, and
Dennis had a question.
Shoot.
Dennis has a question to the group.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that anyone remembers it. But we had like a long time ago, like the full model window as a context menu for the tables row. When you double click or one click on the table row and you have like one or more action to execute, we show like the huge model window to choose. And for now,
In the middle of the screen,
Yeah.
of the screen, a big one.
yes, and for now we have like by the default the other one, which is called by right click on the table row as a regular context menu in any app. And we wanted to ask you that we are going to remove like the old behavior with a huge model window, and we want to know if anyone cares about that or anyone uses them in their apps.
Yeah, so basically if we are in a grid situation, like if I remove this one, delete placing container, this is a grid, and if I go to
If you click,
this
if you
was,
double
that was
click
the
that thing,
VPF. I was strict. It was not the
you got this big action menu on top of everything in the middle of the screen. And nowadays, if you right click, you get this like more desktop-like drop down, which I personally think is much, much better and easier to use. But I looked to it today with Dennis, and it would be nice if we can remove that implementation if no one uses it.
I'm not sure I'm fully with you on where the I was trying to just get it to show. So this is
I mean, you have to have a tagged value to turn it on nowadays. Otherwise, you can't even get it to show.
so we're here. No, yes, yes, we're here, and
Yes.
this one.
Yeah, that's a new one.
Yeah. And before you had
Before you got it. If you add that tagged value, you can get this huge menu all over the middle of the screen.
that you get the whole one that's on as the left menu almost. So what's the tag value?
In the middle
And
of the
where's
screen.
it going? Is it going here?
I think, Dennis, do you remember?
Gonna refresh.
Probably.
Wiki, and it's supposed to call like
Show
old
old
menu.
context menu.
Yes. This.
Show old context menu. Add, and it's a true false. True. Oh, whoops. If I click, maybe.
You only have one maybe, so it doesn't show even.
Yeah. If I have
one action.
more actions here. Or
It's easy to show
this is
them.
still, so maybe I never saved it because let's see if I have more actions over here, class action, save, and click like this.
Yeah.
So that was the old behavior, and the new behavior is douche.
Maybe it still works if you right click.
Let's see.
Maybe the... No.
So right click brings default standard menu, and click brings this one. Going back here, tag value back to false. Closing, save, click. Oh, now it shows up here instead of. I think this is better. So on right click, and this one, yeah, it's the same.
It's just if you have a phone, it's difficult to right click.
Yeah.
That's why you see the dots. So, anyone want the old one?
Not me.
Showing one?
I'm not using that.
But
No, let's make the new one standard, I think. That's better.
It is already standard. So,
Right.
I mean, you have to use.
Yeah.
But if anyone really, because we can ask a few more in the community, but we wanted to bring this up to just get a quick feedback on these things, because we're also thinking of, in the future somehow how to remove the left menu more and more, but still give a default way of not having to do what you did in this demonstration, Hans, just put everything on your own, like save buttons and things, so that you can have like built in, but not taking so much space as the current situation of the save menu, and the root object actions somehow showing up in a way if you don't want to spend the time. I mean, that's always the idea, right? You shouldn't have to spend time if you don't specifically need to.
Yeah, so it should be good to go with as few clicks as possible.
The cheap option would, I suppose, be to introduce some kind of hamburger menu.
Yeah, so that's the almost the default, and if we were to turn on these normal things, turn off the hiding, so to speak, then we have the hamburger here for the view specific things, and that will be the same more or less stuff. These things relate to the details level, so it's the same thing that show up here. And for the main menu, the hamburger folds when the screen space is tight. It shows the views, but of course that folds out to a menu once the screen is larger. So I think it's a good mix that everything is in place when you start and prototype, that you don't have to hunt to do the normal things, but as soon as you're beyond prototyping and you want to own it, really own the screen space yourself, everything, then it's nowadays very easy to do so, even if of course you get the penalty if you own it. You need to do it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for showing up tonight. I think this was a better video that when more stuff worked. So hope this is a trend. See you in 2 weeks if you have the possibility to.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks for tonight. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.